All right, welcome back, everybody. Another episode of Making Monsters. We're now in the thick of camp, and preseason has now begun. We saw the Bears play a Hall of Fame game. So we're looking at some of the players that maybe are looking to make the roster or who have gotten new contracts with the Bears, which are a few of them. And we are joined by Coach Tom Herman. He is now the FAU football coach, head coach down here in Florida, which I also coach. I'm in Jacksonville, so we're not too far away. But thanks for hopping on with me. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate you having me.
So the main reason you've been several places when it comes to Ohio State and Iowa State and Houston, but also Texas. And Texas is the big one I want to start with, and for a few reasons, actually. But Colin Johnson, I think, was probably the star of the Hall of Fame game. The dude's huge, 6'6", big receiver. And I covered the Jacksonville Jaguars too. So when the Jaguars drafted Colin Johnson, I remember seeing him for the first time at OTAs and being like, this is one of the biggest humans I've ever seen out on the football field. But just tell us a little bit about Colin Johnson, his strengths on the football field, and what you saw with him when he was at Texas.
Yeah, and as big as he is as a human being, he's probably got a bigger heart too. He's an unbelievable young man. Skill set wise, I haven't coached one like him before and haven't since. You're right. God blessed him with an unbelievable frame in terms of his size. But I think a lot of times big, tall receivers get labeled as guys that maybe can't run really well. And Colin can certainly run. He's athletic for a big guy. But I think his dominant trait to go along with that size is his ball skills. He's got really, really strong hands. He times his jump or attack to the football extremely well. And like I said, for a big guy, he can do a little something after the catch too. But his strength is going to be in one-on-one coverage using that big frame and his exceptional ball skills.
Yeah, and he had a bit of an interesting career. I know. I think you came there when he was a sophomore, I believe.
Right.
So freshman season, played every single game. During the next couple years, he ended up losing his starting spot and was kind of a backup for a couple years. But from what I've heard, that kind of taught him some lessons during that time, and he took that as a learning experience. Tell us a little bit about that time and how Colin Johnson handled that, and then was able to kind of regain that in his senior year.
Yeah, I don't ever remember him necessarily being like out of good graces or anything. I think, we were rotating more wide receivers at the time. And he kind of hadn't really separated himself. He really didn't show us maybe the real, I hate to use it, the dog, the physical, intense guy that he is, that he truly is inside. We weren't seeing it for whatever reason. And, he took that to heart. And I think just kind of once he felt comfortable in the offense and realized, this is big boy football. And, I'm definitely good enough if I put my mind to this and I show my true colors every day. And he was a joy to be around and in his career, I believe, as a captain. So, I mean, he's a unbelievable player, but like I said, a great young man that did have some ups and downs, but I think he finished his last year at Texas with 70 something catches, I believe, a bunch of touchdowns. So he ended on a great note for sure.
Yeah, and I think I'm rooting for Colin Johnson. I have since he's been drafted. I think that when you see a guy like that, and like you said, most of the time it's just kind of like, oh, these big guys, of course, they're going to be able to make contested catches. But I feel like Colin Johnson goes beyond that. And we talk about all the levels of a wide receiver, of route running, and the hands is a thing, blocking ability. We know Colin Johnson has that ability too.
Yeah, I probably took out route running. For a big guy, he's a very, very crisp, detailed route runner too.
So I feel like, Coach, and this is a part of the NFL injuries. I just feel like that is kind of what has hindered him, obviously. But if he can stay healthy, I think he has a place in the NFL. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm excited that the Bears are seeing, hopefully, his best football.
Yeah. And it could be a fun room with a guy like DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze just drafted, and then a Colin Johnson could be a really fun, dangerous offensive room. But I do want to go with one of the other guys for a minute that you also coached for a bit at Texas, which is Roshan Johnson. Another guy I'm a big fan of around draft time. A lot of Bijan talk, rightfully so. But Roshan Johnson was there, and a lot of people have told me if Bijan was not at Texas, then Roshan would have been the number one, and we would have been talking about him in similar light. Tell us a little bit about your time with Roshan and what you think he can do too when it comes to being a running back.
Yeah, I don't know how often he's told the story, but he came to Texas as a very highly recruited quarterback, and as a true freshman, we were fairly deep at quarterback and not at all at tailback, and he was built well and so on and so forth. And we said, hey, you were mobile in high school, can you give us some depth, as a true freshman at tailback? And, when the spring rolls around, we'll move you back to quarterback. And as a true freshman, he went out and was phenomenal at that position. And we had a talk that spring. We were actually going to move him back to quarterback. And he said, we kind of made the decision together that probably his best future to play professionally would be at running back. And he made us all right, because he's and there's no secret to me, the ones that make it in that league. You're talking about in Colin Johnson and Roshan Johnson, two of the top 20 human beings I've ever had the honor of coaching. So it is certainly no surprise. A leader amongst leaders, Roshan is. He's you can tell he's always been the guy in charge. He's got a quarterback mindset, and I think playing quarterback growing up his whole life really has given him maybe a different view of the game, and his vision and patience in the backfield is really impressive.
That's what I was just about to say. I'm sure experiencing it from the quarterback view for so long does give you a different view from what you're looking at than maybe if you grew up being a running back or a wide receiver or some of those other positions.
He was telling me in college, he was talking about safety rotation in terms of knowing where the blitz was going to come from. So, he would be more tuned into his blitz responsibilities as a running back. And I was like, I don't know that I've ever had a running back talk to me about safety rotation. So
I love that. And that's it. You can tell he's smart. He's one of the things we didn't get to see a whole ton of Roshan Johnson this year. We're expecting a big uptick of what we say Rojo. But I think what type of back would you explain him as? Because a lot of people here kind of say he's going to be that short down, third down type of back. Can he do all of it, or is he a little better in a certain area?
He's probably better in the short space, tough yards, contact yards. But I think that would be selling his dynamism a little bit short. I do think that he has make you miss ability, and he's what I call kind of slithery. He's not a just jump here, jump there kind of guy, but he's got this smooth, silky, slithery way of making guys miss in the open field. So yes, I do think his strength is going to be between the tackles, getting tough contested yards, but he's pretty damn good at the other stuff too.
Yeah, I'm super excited for him in year 2 here. And so I also mentioned at the top of this, you were with the Bears in 2021. I don't want to remiss on Justin Fields again. We've talked a ton about Justin Fields, so I'm not even going to go there right now. But I do want to talk about another Johnson. We've talked Colin Johnson, Roshan Johnson, a guy that was in his sophomore year on the defensive side of the ball when you were there, and Jaylen Johnson, who has just become one of the best corners in the NFL, just got a big contract with the Bears. And I know it's been a couple years since you've been there, but are you surprised at all that Jaylen Johnson's turned into the corner that he is?
No, not at all. This is a guy that it was evident, when you're in the NFL, they're all really good, right? But he stuck out, that he was just always around the ball, always his length, and he was really smart in terms of not to get too silly, but like the tempo in his pedal, and he could run routes for wideouts as good as anybody had seen. And like you said, in just his second year in the NFL, it was impressive.
It's really been fun to watch his growth, but like not only get better as on the football field, but also how he's become such a leader on the Bears defense. And I mentioned at the top too, how little players are left from that 2021 season. That's kind of how much Ryan Poles has done in these few short seasons as the GM, has really turned the roster around. But another player that was there, who was one of my favorite, I'm also a Notre Dame fan, but Cole Kmet. And I think that another player that to me just year by year has gotten better and better and almost underrated in the NFL. What did you see initially that sophomore year from Cole Kmet, and how do you feel his place is in the NFL?
Well, I'm glad the Bears don't underrate him. You know, they I think are pretty well aware of his value. You know, that's another very cerebral guy. Probably could play quarterback if he needed him to. You know, he's that smart and extremely conscientious, and just to see a guy with that frame be able to move and do the things too in the pass game that he can do, it was really impressive too. So I think he's got a bright. I don't know. I don't follow that league a whole lot, but
you're a little busy.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if there's, you know, more than a handful out there that are better equipped for that position than him.
Yeah, and that's what, like I said, he's one of my favorite. I already was excited when the Bears drafted
him. I'm surprised he's not the mayor of Chicago by now.
I know he did. I don't know if you watched any of Hard Knocks, but in the most recent Hard Knocks, they were showing him throw out the first pitch at the Cubs game, and they're like, Chicago native Cole Kmet, and it's just like everybody loves Cole. You're from Chicago, and everybody embraces that and loves that. Another interesting thing, Coach, as I was kind of looking into some of the connections that you have, because originally it was just Colin Johnson, and the more I dug in, the more I saw you had several connections here in Chicago, and whether it be with current players that you coached or ones that are now there. Another one, if we go back to the 2017 season when you were in Texas, your first game was against Maryland. There was a wide receiver named DJ Moore in that game that had 133 yards and a touchdown in that game. DJ Moore. I mean, I feel like he is one of the players that you just talk about being a wide receiver who one of the best when it comes to yards after the catch, one of the best when it comes to those contested catches, deep balls. I feel like he can just do a little bit of everything.
Man, that was a long day. But it was a good day for him. Yeah, he was one of, if not the best players on the field that day, and has certainly shown himself to be an electric player in that league. And you know, the sky's the limit for him. I think he's just coming into his own right now. And you know, from what I heard, the Bears you know, made him a priority and went out and got him, and I think they hit a home run.
Yeah, he's fantastic, and he's another one too that really quickly has become one of the leaders on the team. And I think that with some of the young guys like Aroma Dunze, Keenan Allen, and DJ Moore, I think are some of the perfect fits that you can have in molding some of these guys. Just a couple more for you, Coach, as we talk about just the league in general and how the offense has slowly just kind of progressed into this full offensive league. And for so long, the Bears just have been a defensive team. That's what it is. They could run the ball and they could play defense. And now they're kind of having to transform into this high-powered offense to be able to keep up. And I know you say you don't pay a ton of attention into the league, but how have you seen that transform over the last few years when it comes to some of these quarterbacks, especially more dual threat ones that can move around and run and use their legs a lot more too?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's weird that in a lot of, areas, things kind of trickle down from the highest levels down to the smaller levels. And I think this phenomenon has actually kind of trickled up from high school football into college football and now into the NFL. And maybe it's because of the kind of athlete that we're playing with at that position at quarterback now. You know, that league is kind of forced. This is what you got, you know, this is, and they're doing a good job of playing to those quarterback strengths, I think. And you're getting creative. And the good thing about that league too, is if you got a really good one, you know, the chances are you're going to have them for, you know, God willing, 8, 10, 12 years, you know, and so you can really kind of grow with that quarterback. I think that's the biggest thing in that league, where you can kind of build around those players and build your offense around. We're here, we're changing quarterbacks every couple of years. So,
Yeah.
You kind of have to play with the hand you're dealt sometimes in our level. But there, I think everybody has kind of seen the value in being able to make plays with your feet at that position and has really taken hold of it.
Yeah, the college football right now is a fascinating place when it comes to obviously the transfer portal and NIL and kind of everything that has dug into how we are seeing teams being built now. I think the next few years are going to be very interesting to kind of watch. And I know your former school that you coached at in Texas, now in the SEC. So there's a lot of big changes when it comes to that. How do you feel about that realignment, by the way?
If it doesn't affect me or my team, it's hard to, it's hard. So I do worry about college football and the direction that we're headed. And maybe this is for the better. Maybe we do need, a designation of teams that are willing to, pay guys, millions and millions of dollars to come play them, and some that can't do that. And so, it's headed in a direction that we've never seen, but all this conference realignment, I think it's just the beginning of something more permanent down the road.
Yeah, I agree. Watching the way that the Pac-12 went out last year, I felt every team, it was so entertaining to watch them. So it was kind of a bummer to see it kind of dissolve.
Yeah, not a whole lot of drama this year, right?
Yeah. Final one. I said I wasn't going to say anything, but I feel like I have to when it comes to Justin Fields, because obviously you were there that 2021 season. He's in Pittsburgh now. I think when it comes to Mike Tomlin, we can talk about being one of the greatest NFL coaches. He's been able to do what he does at a consistent basis and never not be above 500. I was a big Justin Fields fan. I was very pro keep Justin Fields, but I do think the Bears were in a very, very interesting situation when it came to having the first pick, even though they weren't the worst team, thanks to the Panthers. But just some of your thoughts on Justin and kind of the biggest part of what makes him such a good athlete.
I would be shocked if he's not really quality, if not championship winning quarterback in that league. I think his upside is tremendous. Physical tools out the mental tools. He's a hard worker. He all of that. Sometimes we're all the victim of our circumstances. I tell our players all the time, or our coaches all the time, you could resurrect Vince Lombardi and bring Nick Saban out of retirement, and if he's coaching a bunch of bad players, they're probably not going to be in the Hall of Fame. And so I say that to tell you the same with quarterbacks. I think they are a product of their environment and their circumstances, and I think with the right circumstances and right environment, Justin Fields is going to thrive.
Yeah, and I mentioned, I'm a big fan, but I also think the guy really busted his butt for the Bears, and he did everything he could to put the Bears in a place that he felt like he could. And unfortunately, like you said, the circumstances weren't there for you. Well, thanks so much, Coach, for joining me. I really appreciate it. I know your season kicks off August 30th, right around the corner. It's going to be here before we know it. I know it's only August 8th, but I feel like once August hits, we're in football season.
You got it. Well, thanks for having me, Taylor. Go Owls and go Bears.
Yes, go Owls, go Bears. Thank you, Coach. Have a good one.
Thank you.